everyone, and welcome to the Simply Reds podcast brought to you by the CTSA. Well, as quickly as the so-called fight for survival ignited, it appears it has extinguished as a 3-1 defeat to Stevenage, and Leyton Orient leaves us 6 points and a much worse goal difference away from safety. The defeats don't change our position. We remain 22nd, but that leaves us with a bigger mountain to climb with just 4 games left of the season. It's myself and Louie today. Louie, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, thank you. I was better before you read that sort of damning indictment of our position. But yeah, I'm good, thank you. Good evening, everyone, or good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's strange. I've kind of come into this recording, and usually I have got some sort of like plan, and I kind of have, but equally I was sort of dejected that I didn't do too much apart from make a couple of word comments about stuff to remind me to talk about. But it's kind of nice just being able to pretty much talk about the football, or not so nice to talk just about the football
I was
because
about to say.
that's pretty bad. So obviously, since our last podcast, we didn't have one last week owing to other commitments, but we obviously lost 3-1 away at Stevenage, which on the whole as an away day, quite enjoyed, to be honest with you. Would have been nice if it would have been a lot better had we come away with something from the game at least, so we could maybe enjoy after the game. But the place and the club, I thought, at least, and we're not actually going to talk about football for this brief segment, I actually thought it was a bit Crawley-like, to be honest. Bigger stadium, but I felt a lot of similarities. I felt a bit at home there, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like a home away from home. It was a nice weather, one of our nicer days of the year so far. Certainly certainly last few months. Good pub, reasonably priced beer, which is and really good atmosphere from our lot as always. You know, it was as an away day goes, it was pretty good. Other than the football that we're not going to talk too much about. I think there's lots of things we could say, but I think it's
a bad performance.
It really was.
So, we just didn't get it. They scored a good first goal with their free kick. We got a relatively lucky equaliser because I really didn't feel like we tested them at all for any of the game. It sort of really came out of nowhere, and even when it went in, I thought it had gone wide from where I was sitting. I couldn't just quite see it, and then everyone else jumped up, and I was just sort of surprised that we got anything goal bound. It just didn't really feel like we had anything all day. So that was
it wasn't the
moment of hope, and then it wasn't the best.
It wasn't like the most convincing shot either. Like Ibrahim he directs it well, but he doesn't get like a really good connection with it. Really? I just think it's so low and in the corner the keeper can't really get down to it. But I think we looked tired. I thought we didn't play with the same energy that we played with in the previous sort of 2-3 games prior to that. And I mean, Scott made a big point of saying, you know, it's that third game. If you do Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, it's that third game that's a bit of the killer. That's a bit of the killer. And I'm thinking, well, could he have rotated more in a couple of those games? Could Max Anderson have got more minutes, for example, in midfield? But yeah, you said about the goal coming out of nowhere. Even when we scored, even after we scored, I kind of, after I finished celebrating and sort of collected myself a little bit, I remember thinking to myself, I didn't feel like we were going to go on and win the game. We had a decent period of play after that. You know, Jeremy Kelly had a volley straight to the keeper, but that was about as good as it got. And then
just felt very disjointed, didn't it? Versus what our usual fluid play.
Compared to the previous 3 games, it was.
And like you said, that Scott said, we had the you sort of tend to see a dip on the third game if you're playing 3 in a week. Well, we seem to have a dip in the fourth game as well because we obviously lost 3-1 last weekend to Leyton Orient, which I think's a more prominent thing to discuss. Stevenage is long out of the memory, ultimately means very little, and was quite poor to have to witness. So yes, I think we can go straight on to Saturday. Look, hit me with it. I missed Saturday for I had a birthday party to go to in London, so I couldn't make the game and that at the same time. So I had to pick one or the other, and seemingly made the right choice. But what went wrong in the firm? You can give me a summary of what went wrong?
Where do I start? I mean, you absolutely did make the right choice. I'm sure you probably had a better time than the four and a half thousand fans that were there. I mean, for most of the game, we were pretty good. I don't even know. We were okay. First half, we looked like we didn't quite have a bit of confidence, but we were actually knocking the ball around quite well, and we got behind them a couple of times, didn't quite make the most of it. But we looked okay, and we got into half time at 0-0, and I thought, do you know what? There's enough in that performance to be encouraged in the first half, and then again started the second half largely the same. Got a penalty, which was definitely a penalty. It's the most easiest decision.
Yeah, nothing
the referee will make all
season.
That one
was no. Absolutely.
And a good penalty from Armando. Do you know what? I am a big fan of penalties down the middle, purely because I think the keeper, 99 times out of 100, he'll dive. So going down the middle, I've got no problems with that. And good bit of composure.
I think certainly become a norm, penalties down the middle. I think there was a big long period of football where it was almost taboo to go down the middle.
It is a bit woke. It's
quite an obvious one, but the goalkeeper 99% of the time does dive one way or the other. So it's like, if you want to guarantee at least just get on target down the middle, odds are he'll probably pat it back out into play anyway. So, but yeah, it was a good penalty from Armando, clear penalty. And then within a minute or two of that, we, for some reason, decided to felt like push everyone forward, leaving no one almost on the halfway line. They punt it upfield, and then the guys left on his own halfway in our box. Conroy gets back, gets pushed off the ball as easy as I've ever seen any defender pushed off the ball. And then Charlie Culman, unfortunately, puts away quite a nice finish, to be fair. But just calamity at the back. I mean, we've become all too has just become all known this season, and we've not learned from it at all. Individual mistakes, poor defensive shape, if there's a goal to sum up our season, I feel like that's a pretty good one. If you just say Crawley League 1 24-25, to show them that goal, you go,
pretty much. It's the mentality after we scored, because we more than matched a good team in Leyton Orient. We more than matched them for the first 50 minutes. We score, and then the mentality after that was just abysmal. I can't really cannot stress that enough, just how abysmal it was. We didn't have a shot after we scored. Not just a shot on target, a shot at all. I don't think it. I'll be happy to be corrected, but not a meaningful shot anyway. Not one that their keeper could have put a deck chair up after the penalty.
Well, it's just something again that happened earlier in the season. We felt like we weren't punishing keepers enough, and goalkeepers we'd either go to games or teams would come here and they'd have their goalkeeper wouldn't have an easier game all season, and that goalkeeper wouldn't have had an easier 40 minutes after we went 1-0 up, would he? Because we didn't offer anything, which is a real shame.
No, it's.
Do you think it's muscle memory? Do you think it's a muscle memory? Why is it a case of the guys are looking at the season as a whole in their heads, and they're also looking at what's happened the previous Saturday to Stevenage, the Peterborough game? Is that the last two games we lost 2 in a row? Is it before Saturday? Was it 2 in a row? Or have we lost another game?
No, it's Peterborough, Stevenage, Orient. Yeah.
So they've then sort of had that muscle memory of sitting there not really knowing what to do and maybe sort of losing a focus, and that's it was a bit of a problem when Scott Lindsay first came in. It took him a little while to sort that the first time round that season when we nearly went down from League Two. And then obviously eventually got us playing last season. But again, that took the best part of 6 months for him to do, from bringing a whole new fresh squad in. So yeah, is it a case that we're just muscle memory says that these players just can't get it out of their head that when they face adversity, they can't seemingly get out of that rut?
Yeah, I think there is. There is an element of that. I think the Peterborough game probably really has damaged the psyche. Even if we'd held on for a point there, we probably would be looking at maybe winning one of these last 2 games. But I think it is really a mentality thing. We can see the soft goal, and like you say, how many soft goals we can see this season. It's a joke, to be honest. And then we just crumble. We give away a penalty, which, to be honest, I'm not sure was the penalty that was. But and then the mentality, we don't, we never look like getting back into the game. with 25 minutes to go, I think it was when they scored, and no, sorry, even worse. The penalty was a minute after, so 53 minutes. Leyton Orient went 2-1 up. So we had the best. We had basically the whole half, including injury time, to get back into the game, and we just never threatened to, never looked like it. The mentality, and to be honest, that's pathetic. It really is. I can't. I know it sounds harsh, and I don't want to dig any of the players out, so I'm not going to, not today. But if you can't react to that, and if you look at how we reacted to going behind against Peterborough when we scored, we went 2-1 down pretty quickly. We got back into it. We then went 3-2 down. We got back into it again. There was none of that. We didn't see any of that against Leyton Orient. We saw it against Stevenage. We managed to get back into the game against Stevenage. Okay, what happened after that was unacceptable, but this was just another level of the players just never. They didn't know what to do. They didn't look like they had it in them to go again. And
is that a case of? Is it a case of physical fatigue as well as a mental fatigue? Is it just a case of, I'm not saying they've been burnt out through the 4 games Scott Lindsay had managed before that, but has that played a part through the fact that Scott has said they've run a lot of kilometres in I don't know if it was the Peterborough or the previous Rotherham game, where they did like 111 kilometres or something total, or even more than that potentially. And running those sorts of numbers, where I guess I don't know what numbers we were running under Rob Elliott. I don't know if that's a stat that you can even find, but is it a case that these guys are just not used to that physical requirement and they can't mentally get through games with that, and they've played 4 games in 3 weeks or whatever it is? So, is that maybe we're being a bit harsh on them because maybe they've just run themselves or been asked to run themselves into the ground, and that's cost us?
I'd like to think not, because they had a whole week between the Stevenage and the Orient games to recover, to get themselves going again physically and mentally. I think that's plenty, especially these professional footballers. This is, they are used to. I can understand there was a period in the season where we were going Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday for 3-4 weeks straight. And that's pretty relentless, and I can understand the fatigue setting in then. But one Tuesday game, where, don't get me wrong, we put in a lot of physical effort in that game, and maybe it's a mental thing as well, but we didn't look tired in the first half. We played with a decent bit of energy.
Okay, in the first half, we should have probably been 1-0 up. Doyle had a semi-decent chance, maybe thrashed that a little bit, and Hetman Murphy also probably should have scored his. I think that would be fair to say. It was a chance.
The one we cut in from the left. Yeah,
he didn't get a good enough connection on it, I would say. It didn't make the keeper work nearly hard enough. It was quite a poor finish by his recent standards.
Yeah, we had to be, like you said, we had some half chances. We were probably the most likely team. I don't, off the top of my head, I can't remember any real danger. They had one shot in the first half. Hutchinson made a good save with his feet, but that was the only real moment of danger for them in the first half. So the first half, I thought the physical, we looked good. I keep saying it, we looked pretty good in the first half, but I think it's, I don't know what it is. The mentality. The thing is, we push up after the goal, and I get that. You're on top, you're at home, you feel like you've got a bit of momentum. If it goes 2-0, it's probably game over. Or, well, maybe not with our record. But it's a goal out of nothing, and it's the most frustrating thing. It's a long clearance. It's not even a ball over the top. It's not even as if they've gone right. It's just a long clearance from their centre back, and it's just not dealt with. And I did say I'm not going to dig players out, but Conroy has to do better. You can't be getting just bullied like that. He got bullied. He just got, smashed off the ball. Almost, like, it wasn't even smashed. Like, that makes it sound like it was a foul. It wasn't a foul. He was
he lost that battle, didn't he?
Yeah, and was it even a battle? I wouldn't even call it a battle. He was just brushed aside,
yeah.
And then
Ollie Campbell's not a big guy either, particularly.
No, he's a good striker. He's a good striker, as he showed.
He's not a. He's not a Stephen Fletcher type, Paul Mullin. You know what I mean? Someone who really digs into players. But equally, he's a League One top goal scorer this season, and we've given him that sort of space to run onto on his own, unchallenged, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a damning indictment that we've let the League One top scorer just have run of the roost for a couple of minutes, and just we've been punished for it. Ultimately, it's just that's what's the biggest frustration, is not understanding who we're playing against. Maybe.
Yeah. And you you can't. We did largely a good job in the first half of keeping him quiet. He had that chance, that one shot which Hutchinson saved that I just mentioned, but we largely didn't give him much to go off, and that's the frustrating thing. Leyton Orient, it wasn't like they were outclassing us. I can accept when we've been to, we've had games this season where we've just been outclassed and the opposition have been a lot better than us. Barnsley, for example, or maybe Leyton Orient earlier in the season. But this game, it was just, again, shooting ourselves in the foot, soft defending for the first goal. And then we don't deal, we don't deal with the second goal. Just giving the ball away. It's just a loose pass down the right. It's a sloppy pass that gets blocked, and we lose the ball, and we let them come into our area, and then it's just, again, the defending. No one wants to take responsibility. Hutchinson sort of goes down at the feet of the attacker.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced it was a penalty, but it should never have got to that point anyway.
No.
And
I can tell you're feeling a bit quite dejected and speechless.
I'm frustrated. Yeah, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but I'm frustrated, and
ultimately, it's nothing new what we've seen this season.
No.
We've had about a 15,000th goalkeeper in goal, and we've conceded the sloppy goal every week or every other game. It feels like we're talking about goals we've conceded, which we didn't think we could get any sloppier, and then we've conceded more sloppy goals. Even the third goal, where we are chasing the game,
just,
and it's the sort of pass out and play we've seen time and time again under. Not so much under Rob Elliott, to be fair, but under Scott Lindsay, that's part and parcel of how he plays into the DM, out to one of the wide centre backs, blah blah blah. Albeit in that position, after watching it back, it doesn't look like that's ever the ball to play. And even so, he puts. I don't think it's Ibrahim's fault. I think it's Hutchinson. Unfortunately, just didn't put enough on it, and he didn't cover himself particularly in glory. It's evident to see he's I don't want to say unqualified, but he's. I don't think he never played a EFL game, let alone League One game potentially.
No, I think his previous experience was 5 games at Marine.
It cost us. It cost us. You wonder why, if that's the case, Jasper Sheikh wasn't given an opportunity. It's easy to say in hindsight. I probably still would have said. I think I did say that before the game. I get it. You say, well, we're trying to win a game, blah blah blah. But equally, I don't see that this guy, whether he's from Bolton or wherever, he's got about as much experience as Jasper Sheikh. The difference is Jasper's had these teammates most of the season, apart from when he was loaned out to Whitehawk the 3 or 4 times that happened. So
yeah, even then he's been training with us, and I don't think. I mean, I'm not going to have a go at a young goalkeeper who's come in on loan, a day or two before, and I thought in the first half he looked all right. He looked fairly comfortable with the ball at his feet, made a decent save, was decent on crosses from what I remember. It's just that second half, and I think when you're a young, inexperienced goalkeeper, if you see the defence in front of you having a bit of a meltdown, that piles pressure on you, and I find it hard to blame him when he's got experienced defenders in front of him who have put him in really difficult positions. Malarkey doesn't do well enough for the second goal to get the ball down the line and just, I think Scott mentioned it, get their defenders turning, get the ball away from out, sort of put the pressure on them, and try and get some momentum back. Because at 1-0, it's still anyone's game, but we just. I think, I go back to the mentality. It's just they just grumbled. There was no one wanting to take responsibility and grab the game for us at 1-0 or at 2-1.
I would say that we definitely, the second goal, I think you can definitely lay blame at Hutchinson's feet. Again, I'm not here to dig him out, but again, I don't think he's the reason we lost the game. But I've watched that second goal back so many times and realised or thought maybe he could have just come and collected that when it rebounded after the Malarkey clearance. I really felt like he could have. It just seemed like it bounced in such an easy position for him to just come and gather it. And again, it's an experience thing. Maybe it's just not judging things in a it might be the biggest crowd he's ever played in front of. I don't know, but unfortunately, again, not having that experience or not having a keeper with confidence, because the lad maybe wasn't playing with confidence naturally, and that's something we've struggled with in goal between the sticks all season, is a goalkeeper struggling with confidence. So we got punished because of that, partially for the second goal. So look, we've we've spoken briefly out for too long, arguably about Leighton Orient, but unfortunately that's it. Why is Max Anderson not getting any minutes?
Do you know what? I had that in my notes for the Stevenage game. So, yeah, I don't know what he needs to do to get minutes. I don't know whether I would love to know, because he's probably been one of the more consistent, reliable players this season. He doesn't shy, and again, talking about mentality, he's never shied away, even in difficult situations in games. He doesn't shy away from the ball. He's always shying for the ball. He's always trying to win the ball back and press. And if you're Scott Lindsay and you're worried about players being tired going into that Stevenage game, for example, why are you not giving someone like Max, who's got decent experience in Scotland and has been? Yeah, I don't get it. I've got no good answer for that. It's a long way of saying I really don't know, and I'd really.
Okay, so why? In which case, then, why is Jack Rolls getting half an hour off the bench? What does he see in Jack Rolls, who was loaned out to Gateshead, who Rob Elliott didn't fancy? And even Scott Lindsay's never really fancied. If we're going back, Robert, he was never a Mr. Dependable in terms of being a starter for Scott Lindsay first time out. And this isn't a Jack Rolls hate thing, because I like Jack Rolls. He can be a dependable player. But I think it's evident through Max Anderson being one of our more consistent players in a pretty poor season that he gets no minutes, and someone who's played at Gateshead for the last 3 months and barely played League One football this season has come in, and since Scott Lindsay's come in, got more minutes than him. I don't know what Jack Rolls offers that Max Anderson doesn't, but obviously Scott Lindsay sees something. And again, this isn't necessarily even a Jack Rolls thing. I'm just using Jack Rolls as a comparison because he's been recalled and he's got as so many. I don't think Max Anderson's played apart from maybe about 20 minutes in Scott's first game.
Yeah,
Just very very interesting. Or even if we could look at Panucci Kamara, who I think is again probably been one of my most underwhelming players this season. Personally, I've not been particularly enthused by him, as I've said a few times on the pod. Why he remains and Max doesn't come in for him, or Jack plays instead of him. It just seems to be a couple of things that maybe I don't know. It's been a very interesting dynamic to our midfield since Scott's returned. There's been a big change from where we looked under Rob, which, hey, I'm not saying it was a better or worse decision, because obviously look at Rob Elliott's record, it wasn't great. But Scott clearly fancies Louie, Liam, and Brad as his midfield three, and when he hasn't got those, it still seems to be anyone other than Max Anderson, which I find really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much said everything that I could say on that. I think the Jack Rolls comparison is natural because he's brought him back from his loan spell at Gateshead, where by all accounts he was doing really well. So perhaps there was something in his thinking, bringing back a player who was chipping in with a few goals, playing for a team at the right end of the table. And to be fair to him, he came on against Stevenage and he did set up the goal. So you kind of have to think, well, it works there.
Is it planning for next season? Max Anderson isn't going to be here next season. I'd wager we're more likely to have Jack Rolls than Max Anderson at Crawley Town come next start of next season.
I mean,
so is that something either in Scott or the powers that be's mind, and that's determining somewhat that?
You'd have to assume it's Scott. If Scott's come back, you'd have to assume that he is getting the players that he wants, and he has the sort of same recruitment that he would want to have, that he would expect to have. You'd have to assume, otherwise, why he could have just not taken the job? He didn't have to take the job, so you have to assume there's reasons for him, whatever reasons there were, that he didn't want to stay in the first place. You have to assume that's. But anyway, I think I do think we are probably more likely to have Jack Rolls than Max Anderson next season. If Max isn't playing in some of the most important games in our season in the running, then you have to assume that Scott doesn't rate him, doesn't fancy him, doesn't think that he offers what he needs from a midfielder. Now, whether again, I'm like you. I think Jack Rolls is a decent sort of impact play. He can come off the bench. He's got a goal in him, and he's got energy, and he gets into some good positions. So I don't think I know he gets. There's sometimes a lot of groans and complaining when he does play, when he does come on. He is a bit of a scapegoat at times, but I think that's probably. I do understand it at times because he has not always produced, but yeah, at times he has produced. So yeah, I'm kind of going in circles. I really don't know why Max isn't getting minutes. I would like to see him get minutes because I don't think the midfield has worked in the last two games, particularly at Stevenage, where we were really disjointed. We couldn't get down the middle. Would Max have helped that? Possibly. I don't know if he's. I think it's quite possible that he's not a Scott Lindsay type midfielder. I don't think he's
the first two games of the season though under Scott Lindsay, or more than the first two. That's the only two I remember is the first two. But I'm pretty sure he started the majority of the season under Scott Lindsay.
Well, that makes it even more confusing. That makes it even more confusing. Like I would say Max is quite. He's not bad technically, but you think of a bit of work rate and energy and.
Is he too much of a Bradley Ibrahim type player? Is he? Does Scott see him as being that role, and we've got Bradley Ibrahim playing? Whereas
I'd be surprised. I don't think they're that similar. I think Brad and Liam are probably quite similar in terms of they like to get on the ball deep, and they're not necessarily types to carry the ball, but they're going to get the ball deep, maybe take someone on, get a pass away. Whereas I think Max is probably someone who likes to get up and down the pitch a bit more, carry the ball a bit more, get into the box. Yeah, so perhaps he just doesn't. Maybe he doesn't see a role for him in his midfield. I really don't know.
Very interesting. Well, hopefully
there's only so many ways we could say I don't know before listeners get sick of us. So
it's interesting. It is interesting. It's the biggest one that's perplexed me since Scott's come back is why Max Anderson's just sat on the bench. He's got less minutes than Gavin Holohan, for example. I think, he's not got many more minutes if he has, but it's just interesting take, to be honest, and especially with the recalling of Jack Rolls. Again, no qualms about that. If there's going to be a benefit to Crawley Town, then fine. All welcome, Jack. Because I have no issue with Jack being at the club. Okay, let's go on to some questions because there's still a player I want to talk about, but I don't know if it will come up in some of the questions. So, firstly, Stephen asks, with the Scott Lindsay bounce over after 2 games, was he the right choice long term?
That's a really good question, and I think a lot of it depends on if he's back this summer, if he's able to. It's interesting because I think if he gets the players he wants this summer, it could be very interesting. And obviously, the aim next season will be to try and return to League One. That kind of has. If you get relegated from League One, you kind of have to try and be ambitious and look towards the top end of League Two. For a club our size, that's perhaps not the case, but I'd like to think that that's the direction the club want to go in.
Certainly wasn't the case the last time we were in League One, was it?
No, and that's the thing. I don't want that. I don't want sort of 10 years of purgatory, 9 years of purgatory before we have an enjoyable season again. So I think Scott's the right man for the job. I don't think it's his. There's so many other things, so many other factors beyond. I know he's taken charge of. It would be 14 league games this season off the top of my head. Perhaps a couple more. So he's taken charge of a decent chunk of games this season, but it's not necessarily his fault that we're in this position. I think we all knew even when he came in and won the first 2 games, it was. We all got really excited, probably got ahead of ourselves a little bit, but it was still a monumental task, even though we did everything we needed to in those first 2 games. So whatever happens in the next few games, whether we get relegated or the 1% chance that we've got of staying up somehow happens, I think going back. Sorry, it's a very long-winded way of saying. I think it depends on what happens in the summer. If we put in a team that's capable of competing at the top end of League Two, or at least in the top sort of 7 to 10 of League Two, we know what Scott can do. We know what Scott can do with a team that's predicted to finish 24th. So we know he can get the best out of players, and he certainly will have the backing from the fans. I don't see anyone else that could come in and do a better job either. Like who else would we want in charge going into next season after relegation? The only manager who can probably galvanise the fans and turn the mood around would be Scott. So yeah, I think
they did though, didn't it? I think it did for the first two games, and then obviously,
absolutely, yeah, of course it did. Yeah,
equally, fan um, belief and power can only carry a team so far, and obviously they have to deliver on the pitch, and obviously fatigue and tiredness plays as much of a part of it. And we saw against Peterborough that again we feel like we should have won, and we obviously didn't. No, I think just because we've lost the last three, having a Scott Lizzie bounce after two games when we'd only won two league games all calendar year or in 3 months before Scott Lindsay came back, I think I think we have to take it with a pinch of salt. I think we're lucky to get any sort of bounce, to be honest with you. Fixtures were favourable. Let's make no bones about it. I think that's helped. But even so, I think even after any of the last three games, personally, Peterborough felt bad, but nothing felt as low as you could argue Boxing Day or the Bolton game, or even Wrexham as well. But that's a different story. But certainly the Cambridge game, I think, where that sort of for me was the nail in the coffin. The way we went out against them. So losing these games, look, I can deal with losing games. And I can, and the first half Saturday, I can get behind it because we played well. We maybe should have. We didn't get the fortune of having the ball bounce for us in terms of Russian Hepburn Murphy's finish and stuff like that. But for 45 minutes, we were good value for it, and unfortunately, we just couldn't hold on to it. That's been the story of our season. I don't expect Scott Lindsay to change that after 5 weeks in the job or whatever it is. So
no, I think you touched on something there. Sorry, I'm jumping in, but you touched on something there, and I spoke about the mentality, and you've spoken about how Scott can't change that after just 4 or 5 weeks, and you can't be expected to do that. And I think I do think there needs to be a real clear out, and it goes back to what I was saying about getting the recruitment right this summer, whether Scott can get the players that he wants to work with, get them in, and what happens in the summer transfer window. There needs to be a near complete clear out of this squad. I think you can't have a relegation. You can have a relegation and keep some of the players. And I'm not even worried. I'm not even concerned with whether they'd be good players at League Two level, because I'm sure most of them actually would be. It's the mentality. It's the fact that we've seen, if you compare to last season where we won so many points from late goals, even, I can, Sutton away off the top of my head, Grimsby away, a late comeback. Bradford, yeah, the most obvious one. There was there's Tranmere at home earlier in the season, I think.
Was that Crawley Lowell's?
Yeah, that's Crawley Lowell's goal. Notts County at home back in the March, where we came back quite late on.
Yes.
The mentality last season was what got us to where we were, as well as good individual seasons from certain players, but it was the mentality that carried us into the playoffs. You haven't got any of that this season. I don't think that can change just because we're in a different league. That there needs to be complete clear out. I think this touches on another question that someone else possibly sent in. It might, but there's maybe 5-6 players I'd want at the club next season, regardless of ability, just because I think the mentality has been awful. And it's just got a bit. There needs to be a clear out, and I'd be very surprised if there wasn't. I'd be very surprised if Scott would want to work with more than 20% of this squad, to be honest, regardless of ability, because they're just, a lot of them just not up to it mentally, and they there's also, for me, on sort of more of a fan emotion, personal sort of note, you have to earn the privilege. It should be a privilege playing for us. It should be a privilege playing for any team, but it should be a privilege playing for us. And a lot of those players, they haven't earned the privilege, and they shouldn't be in next season, because the attitude and the way they've given up in games and the way they've crumbled and the way they've failed to. There's certain fundamentals that are just non-negotiable in football at any level, whoever you're playing for. And it's, there's work rate, there's effort, there's not giving in until you've got no, until the final whistle. And we haven't seen that this season from too many of the players. And you have to earn the right to be here next season. And too many of them just haven't for me. I'm not going to point out certain players in that regard, but
we'll save that for the end of the season.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Look, I will caveat you slightly. Okay. I wasn't there on Saturday. If I was, my head would have been far and away past Mars and to Jupiter, Saturn, and reaching Pluto. I think after that opening 10 minutes in the second half, it was a catastrophe through. That's the only way I could describe it. I don't think, of course, the players on the pitch take the blame, as did Rob Elliott in the dugout for poor performances. Naturally, these players were signed because of a data-led approach, which clearly cannot take into effect potential character references. And I know maybe Scott Lindsay did do that before in the summer with the players that signed. Maybe he did, I don't know. But there has to be an element of where did it go wrong because the data hasn't given us the results it said it did. Now, is it a case that the data model actually just doesn't work potentially? Maybe our the gap from Crawley Town, the club we are, and the revenue and the money we've got, the data can't bridge. It doesn't matter how we don't have that enough to bridge that gap. The data won't provide us with a talent pool of players who will want to come and play for us that can reach those levels. Maybe that's what comes down to it. And I think that we always knew it was going to be a tough season. I could appreciate that it comes down to, we just wanted to see some maybe more fight and belief. And for a long time, it has been a bit miserable. And unfortunately, we won't necessarily remember too many of these players too fondly, assuming once again there'll be a mass exodus in the summer and a reshuffling, because ultimately, wages will drop, etc., and revenues are going to drop. Everything like that changes, and when you get relegated, naturally you're going to see a worse group, technically a worse group of players come in or worse players sign because they're not going to be at the level of what you were hoping for in the season before. So yeah, I think I'm going to just slightly caveat you and say I think the players get a lot of the stick. I don't necessarily think that they deserve all of it, because I think some of it has to come down to the recruitment strategy from last summer, and that's played a big part both on the pitch and off the pitch by who we then got in as manager. So that would be my only caveat to what you've said.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you on that. I've said throughout the season it's not necessarily some of the players' fault that they're not up to it. Then that's kind of where I still think, it's one thing to lose if you're outclassed. It's one thing to lose if you just get beaten by a moment of quality, which has happened this season. But there's been too many games where we've gone toe to toe with good teams. We've shown that we've got the quality at times to play a certain way and to really hurt teams, and then we crumble. And and like you say, that can't be measured by the data approach, which I've got no problems with a data-led recruitment approach, because I think if you're a small club like us, particularly at this level, with really limited resources relative to the level, I mean, it's an obvious example, but Birmingham spending, 20 million or 15 million, whatever it was, on Jay Stansfield, who hasn't even got 10 out non-penalty goals.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if he's only got 2 more non-penalty goals than Will Swan, for example? And sorry, that might come across as a bit of a dig at Will, but that's more of a point on, just the fact that you have to be. You can have whatever resources you've got. You still got to be smart with it. And so I've got no problem with a data approach, because it worked last season. It brought us a squad that we all loved and that we could all get behind, that plays some really exciting football. A lot of that was down to Scott, but the players still had to go out there and do it. I think the limitations of where we are financially and where we are in terms of resources probably just got exposed this season. And I think if you look at some of the players, there's probably a conscious choice of. I made this point on Twitter yesterday about, particularly with the centre backs, if you're going to play the way we do, you need centre backs that are good on the ball and can cover ground quickly and are physical. And those centre backs at this level, they're not playing for us. They're playing for teams like Birmingham or Bolton or Wrexham. Because they're really good top end League One centre backs. That's not in our ballpark. So I think there was probably a conscious choice of, well, do we go for players who we know are going to get exposed physically, but can still look decent, who are still comfortable on the ball, and who can still fit into what we're trying to do tactically, build out from the back with a certain style of play. Players like Malarkey, Conroy, Flint, although we haven't seen nearly as much of Flint as we would have liked this season. Players who we know might get exposed physically at times, but are good on the ball and can defend, can maybe defend the box if we're under pressure. I think there was a conscious decision to sort of sacrifice one of those things. And in hindsight, was it the right thing to do? Probably not, because I think if you have enough physicality in your team, you can probably make up for technical deficiencies, where technical deficiencies can't always, as we've seen, cover those physical deficiencies. So would we have been better off with players who aren't quite as good on the ball, but don't get exposed one-on-one and counter-attacks, 20 times a game? Maybe that would have kept games tighter at times for us. We might have gone to places like Peterborough and won, but then I don't know. It's a really tough one. I said before that I think the recruitment wasn't good enough in the summer, but I think on reflection, was it just an impossible task? I really don't know.
Well, let's look at it this way. If we look at the bottom 8 teams in the league, we've scored the joint most. We've scored 49 goals. So goal scoring hasn't actually been as big a problem as it has felt like a lot of this season. You look at the other end of the pitch, we've got the worst defence in the league, and we've conceded 100 goals in all competitions this season. So I think
I just don't know how we've managed that.
It's evident where the massive frailties lie, ultimately. And again, not digging at any specific people, but I think in terms of how we set up and what we've assigned this season, when you look at, we've got Dion Conroy, who been injured half the season, I think is probably fair to say. Pretty much didn't feature until, I don't think, after the new year, maybe. I don't know if he featured.
I think Birmingham at home a couple of days before Christmas was his first appearance.
So halfway through the season, nearly, pretty much. Joy McKenna started the season, who was second, third, fourth choice last season.
He was basically fourth, fifth choice. Yeah,
Ollie Barker signed from National League South. Toby Malarkey, second choice at Grimsby, who nearly got relegated. Josh Flint, who got relegated from the Eredivisie with a silly goal record last season, I think, as well. Benjamin Tenemu, who we've not seen since Cheltenham ascended a third or whatever. So we've
the mystery of Benjamin.
Centre halves, 2 of which were here last season, neither of which are probably what you would look to go into starting a League One season with. Dion Conroy, sometimes will get the ball and do things where you think that's really bloody brilliant. Actually, I did one earlier in the season where the ball came down and he just gathered it on the chest and read the game perfectly well, and it looked fantastic. Rolls Royce level on certain elements, but the elements which are important, defending as a defender, no one has particularly covered themselves in glory this season, and that has ultimately been our biggest downfall. Is the weaknesses. And the chop changing we've had in defence hasn't helped, but equally for a lot of it, we probably have had settled-ish, albeit not our best centre-half, centre-back pairings, but still been more settled. So defensively, I think that's where we've got to look first and foremost in the summer, hasn't it? Because we've got to sort that out.
It's a massive summer. God knows. This is probably in contrast to last summer. I think fans will probably be glad to see. There won't be, if there's massive changes. If we end up with 20 new players again, I think it will be probably quite welcome and quite exciting, depending on obviously who we bring in.
Let's look at this. Matt's asked who from the current squad that the Fairs would like to keep will actually still be at Crawley next season. Straight off the bat, two I'd like to stay but are almost certain to part are Jeremy Kelly and Josh Flynn. That's what Matt says. Sorry, that's not my opinion. Go on, give me a handful of players that you would like to keep. Give me any players that you would like to keep, but maybe you just don't think will be here next season.
I don't think we'll be here. Yeah, I think Jeremy's out of contract, isn't he? So I'd be surprised if.
No, did he not sign a new deal just after the summer? I thought he's tied down for at least another year after this
Oh,
summer.
possibly. I thought he was out.
I thought I thought he
That
signed like
does
a
change
2 year
things.
deal because he
Oh,
was out of contract last summer, wasn't he?
right.
And then we
Yeah.
actually thought we might not be keeping him, and then he signed a 2 year deal.
Yeah,
I
you're
think.
absolutely right. I remember because they did the video where he got delivered the.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was very good.
Um, okay, so I mean, yeah. Again, I wouldn't be. The thing is, with how we've operated in the transfer market, it feels pretty silly to say that anyone will be here next
Yeah,
season because you
that's
think,
fair.
for example, Charlie Barker. I think he'll probably be here next season. But actually, you think, well, would I be surprised if he left? If he got, it feels like anyone is up for sale. Anyone and everyone is up for sale. So players, I think I'd be surprised if.
I'd like to keep Hepburn Murphy personally. I'd like to keep Hepburn Murphy. I'd like to keep Jeremy Kelly. I'd keep Flint. I'd keep Barker. I mean, Bradley Abraham's not our player anyway. I'd keep Liam. Liam. Why can't I'd get
Liam
Liam
Fraser, yeah,
Fraser? I was going to
Fraser,
say I kept thinking Watson, but that's the other fella.
yeah. I think
I'd keep
Louie
Liam
Watson will
Fraser.
probably be here next summer, next
Yeah,
season because he signed what is it, 2.5 year deal,
yeah. So
and I think he could be a really really good player at League Two level. To be fair, but we just haven't seen enough of him because of injury and the fact that he came in at the end of February or something. So sorry, I've jumped in again.
there aren't tons, but there are still a handful that I would like to see a squad built around because it helps no one. Replacing 20 a whole squad, it helps no one. It hasn't helped us this season. Would we be better off if we had the same squad last season? I don't know. I think if you had Scott Lindsay in both dugouts, managing both teams for the same period of time, you'd probably say this team I do think would probably still have the beating of last season's team. Personally, I do still think that.
At say so. I'd probably be yeah.
I do think there's that level of individual quality there that is still better. But saying that, there's been very little continuity again. There will be mass changes probably again. That won't help us next season. A bit like the last time we went down from League One, albeit again that team, for many reasons, could not stay together. So
That was like yeah, that was. I mean, yeah, I guess we've kind of got opposing views on this because I've spoken. I think we do need a bit of a clear out. I think there's certain players who haven't earned the right to be here next season, and
yeah, I think that's fair.
that's probably a bit of an emotional view. And from a mentality point of view, how many times have I said mentality in the last 45 minutes? But it's, I think one thing that I wanted to pick up on was Scott made a big thing when he came in of saying, I'm confused as to why we are where we are. I don't know. I look at these players, I don't know why they are where we are. I think he's probably in the last 10 days or so, the last 3 games, he's probably found out
Yeah,
a lot about why we are where we are. And I think he's probably got his answers. So I think I wouldn't be. Let's assume that Scott's in charge of recruitment. Let's assume that he's got the final say and he's allowed to bring in the players that he wants. I think that there's. If I'm thinking from his perspective, and I know this is sort of slightly straying from Matt's question, but he probably want to. I mean, Armando won't be here next summer. Next season. I think we can guarantee that. But I'm trying to think realistically, who will we have? Because there's an argument to be made that a lot of them will either be moved on or wants to move on.
one position I think will be very highly sought after for some fans is the goalkeeper position because
Yeah,
Mark does ask if either of us know any good League Two level goalkeepers going. Asking for a friend. Well, and he does say, what was once a one player for 6 seasons has become insane this season with the amount of different keepers playing and
6 players
loaded.
for one season. Yeah,
That's obviously no one's fault. We've lost, we lost Ryan Sanford to injury before the season even got going. Eddie Beach just didn't work out. Joe Monaco's had international duties galore somehow. We had Eddie Cox, was it?
Matt Cox. Yeah,
Sorry, Eddie Beach, Matt Cox, Conu Truman, and obviously Timothy Lowe Tatala, as well as obviously Luke Hutchinson at the weekend. So all of which have been forced by the club's hand. None of that is through choice. And how different our season might look had Matt Cox not got injured against Bolton. It could be a very different. We could be a few points better off. We could be. I don't think we could be much worse off, to be honest. So, I think. But just go back to Mark's question: do we know any good League Two level goalkeepers going? I don't know if he's going, but there's a certain Glenn Morris who's still kicking it about down at Gillingham, who I wouldn't be opposed to. He's still got his canine reflexes, so I wouldn't be honest.
I'd be very surprised. Very surprised. Yeah, I mean, he's not a Scott's type of. He's an old school goalkeeper. He gets the ball at his feet and he boots it as far as he can. He's not someone to put his ball. I mean, I'd be very surprised if we get him at League Two level. But Timothy Lotitala, according to a couple of fans who spoke with him after the Bristol Rovers game, he wanted to be here. He wanted to come back in the summer.
Will never happen.
Yeah,
I'd be very more tattoos, but ain't happening. That's all
I'm not making any more. I'm still slightly worried about the Will Swan bet, although I think I'm quite safe on that. So, yeah, I mean there's plenty of goalkeepers out there. There's, I remember some of you might follow him, Tom Williams on Twitter. He's a Notts County fan, but he covers a lot of football, a lot of the EFL. He's very knowledgeable. He's very thoughtful about the game. And, he was saying that I distinctly remember a tweet from him some time back now saying that we didn't realise as Crawley fans, because he'd never actually played for us, because Corey Adai was number one, but we didn't realise how good a keeper we had in Brian Sanford. Now whether he gets I don't know when he's due back from his injury. Obviously, a really nasty injury. But if he's able to get some pre-season in, and Scott's able to have a look at him, again, I'm going off one tweet of someone else's opinion, but we've got no idea how good or otherwise Ryan Sanford might be. If he's a League Two quality keeper, then we might. What I'm saying is we might already have the answer, and it could just be a case of getting a backup keeper in. That's one possibility that probably not very realistic. I imagine I'd be stunned if we don't get a first choice keeper in who can be the number one for 46 games. But I wonder, we sort of talked about recruitment. I wonder how many of the old of Scott's old boys will try and get back in.
I can always guarantee that I'll also be a big fan zero personally.
I don't know. We were very confident that we wouldn't be seeing Scott back at the Broadfield ever, unless it was in the opposition dugout. I wouldn't be surprised if I think Danilo Orsi will be on the move in the summer. I would not be surprised if we went back in for him. I wonder if Liam Kelly, who isn't having a great time at MK, I wonder if he'll be on the move.
And I'll be honest,
I think they're probably.
I don't think they're the right choices. I think we've had that period, and I don't think they're the right choices. I'll be honest.
I think no, possibly not. I mean, it would be nice for nostalgia's sake, and I say nostalgia like they're 40 years old.
More than anything in the world. They're giving me some of the best memories supporting Crawley, but I just we've gone back with the manager. Let's reset them.
I'm not saying I necessarily think it's the best idea, although I wouldn't be against it. But I'm saying I think knowing Scott, the way he operates, and the fact that he brought a couple of those players, a few of his old players to MK famously, he seems like someone. And bearing in mind when he came to us from Swindon, he brought in Ben Gladwin. He is someone who likes to operate with players that he trusts and that he's worked with before. So I do think I wouldn't be surprised if one or two of them, and in particular Orsi and Kelly. I'm not saying I think it's guaranteed to happen, but I think there's a much better than zero chance of it happening. But anyway, we've kind of gone off on a massive tangent from Mark's question there.
We've got through these questions in not so record time, to be fair. So look, we've obviously got 2 games coming up over the weekend against Birmingham and Exeter. To save this not being a 2-hour podcast, I don't think luckily we have to talk too much about them, because I think Friday could be a very scary day. is my truthful. I know a lot of people think they might be on the beach. I'm not buying into that at all. They are going to be. It's going to be rocking at St Andrews. St Andrews, yeah, St Andrews on Friday. It's going to be unlike anything that place has seen for a long, long time. They weren't there. They haven't played since they've won the league. They might have played once since they got promoted, or they were away, I think, when they got promoted potentially. So Friday is going to be a scary day, and if we start poorly, oh boy, are we in for a torrid afternoon on Good Friday.
I'm gonna, and this isn't me playing sort of devil's advocate or anything.
No, this is just what you think.
This is my sincerely held opinion. I am very glad that they will have nothing to play for, because I think that just naturally leads to and I mean, I'm fully prepared for this to blow up in my face, but I think that naturally leads to just a drop off in intensity, and whether it doesn't matter how much the manager says, oh, we're still going to, go 100% and take it really seriously and everything like that. I think they lost at Wembley on Sunday to a Peterborough side that we know they're a decent attacking side, but Birmingham are by far the best team in the league and should have beaten them. They were massive favourites going into the game. So
I think that works more into our favour than the fact they've already won the league, personally.
I think
have more chances than not.
Yeah, I think they've got nothing to play for. They're a bit deflated. They've had a lot of emotional energy going into the last couple of games they played. They got promoted. I think it was at Northampton. It was definitely away from home. They got promoted in midweek before the weekend just gone. They haven't played a league game since. I think perhaps a lot of the momentum and the energy has gone out of the season. They haven't played a league game for well over a week. The last game they played, they lost a cup final that they were massive favourites in. They're going to be having a bit of a party because they're now the champions, and they've got every reason to celebrate. But are they going to be fully switched on? And we've got to try and take advantage of that if we want to get anything. I mean, I'm still talking like we've really got a chance, but
we can't get relegated. I don't think. I think we can in theory be relegated, i.e. 9 points off. And if it's Burton who we are 9 points behind, then we might as well just start looking at how much it's going to cost us to get to Barrow next season, because our goal difference is that much worse, and there's no way we're overturning a 15+ goal difference with 3 games left.
I think in terms of how we'd approach the game, I mean, one other thing that gives me a little glimmer of hope. Birmingham, sorry, it wasn't the Northampton game they got promoted at, because they played Northampton a few weeks ago, and I remember Northampton's goal. They drew 1-0. Northampton's equaliser came from a really super aggressive press up in the Birmingham box from sort of a goal kick, I think, and then Birmingham tried to play out and got caught. And more recently against Bristol Rovers, Birmingham were very unconvincing. They won 2-1 thanks to a Jay Stansfield penalty, of course. Wouldn't have been a goal from open play. And Bristol Rovers had by far the best chances in that game. Could have won the game 2 or 3-1. So perhaps there's been slight signs in recent weeks that you can hurt them. They're not like this. I think the worst thing we can do is go into this game thinking that we have no right to be on the same pitch as them, because you just beat them before you even turn up. If that's the case, you might as well not turn up. We've got to try and say.
Think that. I think
I'd like to think you won't.
Think slightly different, but I think certainly I will, because I'm the biggest pessimist going. But I think it's going to be a silly day, whatever happens. I think. I don't think. One thing I can almost guarantee is it won't finish 0-0. Put it that way. I think that's the safe bet for the day. So
I am now going to go and place a bet on that.
Yeah.
Now you said that.
So give us your prediction then. What about predictions? Hit us with what you're saying. Because I'm going to go with my heart tonight. Because if I go with my head, I'm just going to be called super negative.
I am going to go with my head. And I'm going to say 3-1 Birmingham. I think we'll take an early lead. They'll score just before half time, and then 2 late-ish goals will kill our season off for good. It will finally put the nail, the very last nail in the coffin. And then Easter Monday, rather ironically, will see us lowered into the grave, despite whatever result we get against Exeter. It won't even matter. I mean, if we do somehow get a result against Birmingham, I'm looking at the next 3 games, and I'd rather be us than say Burton or Bristol Rovers, because Burton goes.
You said that about Burton for the last 4 weeks, and they just.
I know they turned out to be just quite good. it's really annoying. It sounds to be quite a functional, just like mid-table level team, and that's apparently.
What was your prediction? Sorry, we're going to win 2-1. Lose 2-1.
We're going to lose 3-1. I think we'll take the lead, and I think it'll be a pretty heroic performance. But I just think they will just about get one over on us.
A heroic 3-1 defeat, I don't think has ever been mentioned in the same sentence.
No, I think it'll be. I think we'll go one up, and then it'll just be a couple of sucker punch goals at the end that do us in.
Yeah,
exactly, and I think it just follows the pattern for us this season. And then Exeter will probably beat them like 2-0 or something, but it won't matter.
My heart says I think I'm gonna go for a wacky 3-2 on Friday. That's what my heart's gonna tell me.
I'll get you tattooed on me if that happens. You've got Preston.
No, we're not doing tattooed.
No, I'm joking.
The Simply Red podcast is going to be sponsored by a tattoo shop somewhere.
We need to sort that out. Yeah.
No, we don't. So I think I'm going to say we'll win 3-2 somehow. And on Easter Monday, I think pressure will be off then. I think what was it 4-4 earlier in the season? They're not particularly good. Great team. They've struggled this season. Exeter.
They are genuinely as bad as us, Exeter. If you look at the data.
And we've got Kamari Doyle now, not them, although he didn't play against us. I think he did, but he played the first half when we were 4-1 up. So maybe we'll win 4-1 on Easter Monday.
Do you know what? It would be very Crawley. And I said this to my dad earlier. I think it might have been yesterday. I said it'd be very Crawley for us to go, having completely let ourselves down over the last couple of games, to go to Birmingham and win, and then still somehow get relegated. I think that'd be the most Crawley thing of all time.
Yeah.
I've got a note. I've got a note that I wrote in my notes last week before I realised we weren't recording, that says overall, if we end Easter less than 3 points off safety, I think we have a huge chance to stay up. Given if you look at the final two fixtures, we'll have by far the favourable fixtures out of both of them, out of the three teams, and it's still technically possible, which is, and I hate myself for saying it because I hate myself for even giving myself a slight.
It's like we played Birmingham at the wrong time, isn't it? If we played them in 2 weeks' time, if we could have gone into Easter and got 6 points, and then suddenly we're 3 points off safety with 3 games left, you'd almost fancy us with maybe having Birmingham with the second to last game or something. But obviously, with our predicament now, with every game almost being a must-win, and we're in a slightly different predicament where if we lose, then it sort of curtains, and it is what it is. But hey, no, it'll be a good day out regardless. Looking forward to it because we're not going to be playing them anytime soon. I can almost guarantee that unless we draw them next season in the cup.
Yeah, exactly. I just hope we take the games to them. I hope we show some fight. I hope we try and I hope we go out to win the game rather than try and contain them or manage them, because we've got to go out and take the games to them, try and be on the front foot and give them a bloody nose early on and see what happens. I think that's the only way. That's the only way we're going to come away from there with the result that we need.
So
it's not going to happen.
We will now move on to a couple of club updates. There is a new beer. Hurrah! We can get drunk on Monday as we celebrate relegation back to League Two. Crawley Town Football Club is delighted to announce that the club will be launching a brand new club beer, or they did before Leighton Orient. The aptly named Red Devils Lager will debut in the fan zone, 4.5%. They I believe reference it. Oh yeah, it features a striking design with the image of the devil himself with a familiar trident pattern. Striking is one way of describing it. I don't like the design of it. Did you have any at the weekend? Did you try it?
No, I didn't. But what I do like is it's a local brewery.
I heard it was actually quite nice, which is good.
Yeah, a local brewery.
And any nice tasting beer, but it's a local brewery, which is obviously really positive as well. £5.50 a pint, not too bad. And I'm glad. I thought originally it was just going to be sold in cans. So when it was there on tap, I'm looking forward to trying that on Easter Monday. That's for sure. I should have asked someone to buy me some, so I could have had some on the way up to Birmingham. I didn't think about that.
It's not too late.
I'll have to see. I need to go and pick up my Birmingham ticket, so I'll have to find out if I can get any. Supposedly, it's going to be distributed to pubs, restaurants, and shops locally and beyond, which again, fantastic. That could provide a really good revenue stream. it's a slightly quirky one. I know other clubs do have alcohol, but I don't think many at our level do. And also, I actually didn't read this initially. The club is partnering with the Crawley Town Disabled Supporters Association to identify a charitable cause or beneficial use of a portion of the proceeds to drive positive impacts in the local community. Fantastic. That's really good stuff. Stuff we haven't seen or heard from Crawley for years almost. Something like that. Obviously, last season we've had sponsorship from the Community Foundation, but in terms of doing stuff like that, that's something I overlooked when originally reading the thing. So I think, kudos to the club for finally for coming up with an idea. I did make a comment on social media and say I was slightly puzzled that was a potential focus when we had next to no sort of staff to be able to drive this sort of thing. This is something which must have been in the pipeline for a long while. And it wasn't necessarily a criticism, it was just a comment to say, we've been told a lot this season that everyone at the club's working multiple roles. Well, look, we're finally starting to employ people, it seems, which is good infrastructure for the club, hopefully. So yeah, hopefully it carries on, and again we'll see it throughout next season. And if there are any Crawley fans out there, make sure you do buy the Red Devils lager. Other beers are available, but obviously buy your own and help the club out by procuring that supposedly very tasty beverage.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I'm just going to add to that. Yeah, I think it's good to see, because one of the things that we've on the CTSA we've said to the club is that they need to be working with local businesses, being more innovative, and trying to bring in revenue in more creative ways, and working on the commercial side essentially. And it's good to see stuff like that starting to take shape. And there's still a long way to go. There's still lots of things that needs to be done. But it's good to see them working with local businesses again, because that's something that disappeared over the last, I don't know, however many, 2.5, 3 years. It's for a good cause as well, with some of the money going back into the local community. So I think, as much criticism as we've given the club at a commercial and at a sort of day-to-day running level, it's only fair to say that they've got this right. And I can understand why people would not like the timing the day before the Orient game, but I don't think it makes a difference, does it really? I know I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, you're releasing a beer the day before the game. What are you doing?" It's like, well, when else? Why does it matter when they do it?
If anything, it's actually really. I did agree with that. I said it should have waited until the summer, probably, but it's actually really clever, because they know if we got beaten, there'd be a lot more people drowning their sorrows and drinking up before the season ends. So actually,
great timing.
A stroke of genius from the club on that regard. But look, tongue in cheek, it's some of it's going to a good cause. It's partnered locally. It's helping the local infrastructure, and hopefully the club will see a positive return on that, which will only benefit the club. So yes, time will tell if it does turn out to be a good investment and a good idea. But it says all the right things in the news article, so hopefully it delivers on that. And like I said, time will tell. I just hope that the badge which is on there isn't the one that's going to be on the third shirt next season. That's my only thing. Not a fan of that, but
I would not be surprised if it is. I would not be surprised. No.
Other news, the last bit of news for the night. They're relaunching Reggie the Red competition. The club is pleased to announce that it's collaborated with the Devil's Advocates to finally bring you the opportunity to design the next Reggie. That's good. My one query is obviously the people, the generous people who do the Res rollover, were originally going to fund Sensu, and the club, obviously everything with the survey, which naturally threw a bit of a spanner in the works in wondering, are we actually going to have a change in how we see Crawley Town going forward? So that's been shelved until the summer, and with no communication at all, they've relaunched it. And personally, I just think it's a bit of a middle finger to some fans anyway. That's my own personal opinion, not the opinion of the CTSA. But I think, I just think it's, some of the members of the CTSA and those who fund the Reds rollover collaborated on that, went out and got designs, and it was only through the club's sort of mismanagement that got shelved and was supposedly said it will be revisited in the summer, and the club have just completely taken that off the table with no further communication, and that's really disappointing. So that's my 2 pence on
I
it.
think, and yeah, I think, and again, this is very much a personal view of mine, but it's knowing how hard the CCSA has tried to engage with the club and with the ownership, and especially on this, using the Res rollover money. It very much feels it's another example of, we've tried to reach out, we've not had much in terms of getting much back, and perhaps the Devil's Advocates group reached out to the club and said, well, we'd like to play a part in it, and if that's probably the case, and that's fair enough. The club are fully entitled to do what they want with it, but I think when you've got a group of fans who have been trying to build bridges with you, who we haven't, as CCSAs, there's been, I think we've made no secret of the fact there's been a breakdown in communication with the ownership. So this very much feels sort of quite pointed, I suppose. I don't know, perhaps could be reading too much into it, but I thought, considering that it would be very easy olive branch to extend, going both ways. So very, very interesting that it's gone this way. But again, club are fully entitled, obviously, to do what they want with it.
If the club want to spend their own money on we want to spend their money on a new Reggie suit, then so be it. Who are we to tell them how and what to spend their money on? But it's just a bit disappointing after work was put in, and then it would have been nice for the Reds rollover members to have had that sort of just that sort of little positive put back to the club. But obviously that's not how it's worked out. For whatever reason, only the club can answer that. But such is the way, and so they have relaunched a Reggie the Red competition. So they hope to have it decided by mid-May, so they can get him in place or get them in place for the 25-26 season. Louie, any news before we wrap up tonight?
I was going to say, speaking of Reds rollover, we've got the results for the March Reds rollover draw. It's slightly later than we'd normally like to do it, but having not recorded last week, we thought we'd do it this week. So in third place is the Crawley Town Football Club Disabled Supporters Association. In second place, we've got Graham Longley. And in first place, winning the big prize, is Perry Watts. So enjoy your winnings, and they'll be on their way to you very shortly, possibly even by the time you've heard this podcast. And
congratulations!
As always, thank you everyone who continues to take part in the Res Rollover every month. Your support is massively appreciated, and we hope that we can continue to rely on that for some time to come.
Well, if you're not sure what the Reds rollover is, and you want to find out more about it, do visit our website, the ctfcsa.com, I believe. If not, try.co.uk, but I'm pretty sure it's .com. You'll find information there. You can contact Louie. You can contact the chair at ctfcsa.com as well. And we'll be happy to answer any questions about potentially joining up. Louie, I will catch you on Friday for what will be a very good Friday, I hope.
Weekend. It's a weekend for miracles. That's all I'll say.
It is. There'll be
more
than one revival this weekend. That's for sure. That's all I say.
Yeah, it's. I mean, some people have compared Scott Lindsay to religious figures in the past, so let's hope that's the case this weekend.
Is one of them. Look, as always, we do get some lovely feedback about the pod. We also get some critique, and we would like to hear both of those so we can always improve and do better. So please do stop us at Birmingham or at any home game for the rest of the season. Give us the positives and negatives, and we look forward to seeing you at upcoming games. And until then, come on, you Reds.
Come on, you Reds.